Assalamualaikum student, I am your instructor Taiba Jabeen, and today we are going to discuss the course titled History of English Literature, and our topic is Modern Poet Part 2. In this lecture we are focusing on modern poets. So far we have discussed the Georgian period and few of the other modern poets, but today's lecture will focus on these 5 things. The first, the Images group; the second, the French poet; third, William Butler Yeats the Great, and one of the influential modern poet, that is Thomas Eliot, and the fifth one is poets after T.S. Eliot. Before going into the detail of modern poetry, we are focusing on modernism. We are focusing on the term modernism. Okay, what actually modernism is? Modernism is a comprehensive movement which began in the closing years of the 19th century and had a wide influence internationally during much of the 20th century. Modernism is an artistic and cultural movement that flourished in the first decades of the 20th century, about the time of First World War. Modernism is a cultural trend. It is the movement in visual art, music, literature and drama which rejected the old Victorian standard. So far we discussed that it's a comprehensive movement and it revolted against the old Victorian standard, and this tried to explain how art should be made. Modernism was developed in the first 3 decades of the 20th century. It was developed in Europe, especially in the Great Britain. Now coming to the third point, it reveals breaking away from established rules, traditions and conventions. Fresh ways of looking at man's position and function in the universe, and many experiments in the form and style. It is particularly concerned with language and how to use it. It is a style or movement in the arts that aim to break with classical and traditional forms. Embracing change and present, modernism encompasses the works of thinkers who rebelled against 19th century academic traditions, believing the traditional forms of art, architecture and literature as one of the outdated ones. They directly confronted the new economic, social and political aspects of an emerging, fully industrialized world. Encouraged the re-examination of every aspect of existence. You can also say that in the second half of the 19th century and the early decades of the 20th century, both nature and social sciences in Europe had advanced. So we had seen changes not only in literature, but the socio-economic conditions also changed, so that influenced the literature. Their rapid development led to great gains in material wealth, but when capitalism came into its monopoly stage, they sharpened contradictions between socialized productions and the private ownership, caused frequent economic depression. It also influenced by the First World War that brought tremendous catastrophe with it. So far it is concluded that modern writers believe that the traditional social, religious and political order had broken down, Economically, the World War marked the last stage of the disintegration of the British Empire. Britain suffered heavy losses in the war. Thousands of people were killed. The economy was ruined and almost all its former colonies were lost. People had economic and cultural problems. The writers did not believe in old and traditional values. They disturbed their readers by adopting complex and difficult new forms and styles. The rise of irrational philosophy and new science greatly influenced modern writers to make new explorations on human natures and human relationships, and even in poetry. Now coming toward the modern poetry. Modern poetry introduces new trends, especially the use of free verse. Modern poets rejected traditional meters, so they are going to change not only the style, not only the language, but they try to give new expressions, try to innovate new verses, new rhymes. It's a total revolution against the conventional ideas and forms of the Victorian poetry. Poets were full of tension and anxiety, as modern age is also called as the age of anxiety, so they are portraying their inner feelings in a very modern way, in a new way. Poets reject traditional meters, they mix colloquial language with elegant phrases and quotations from earlier poems. The two wars and impending danger of a third have cast a gloomy shadow on much of the poetry of the 20th century. In spite of material prosperity, poets were full of tension and anxiety, which are almost an inseparable features of modern living. Add to them the disappearance of religious faith and disillusionment is natural in modern poetry. So when we are going to explore the features of modern poetry, we have seen many traditional poetic dictions and even regular meters have been discarded almost completely. Though rhymes have almost gone, rhyme free from the artificial demands of metrical regularities is still used. A language with a flow and forms of common speech is mostly employed. Free verse is the most usual mode of all serious poetry of today. In the 20th century, many experiments have been made on the technique and diction of poetry. So now coming toward the first subtopic, that is the imagist. Imagist group of people or poets. You may say that poets in England and American between 1909 and 1917, and more probably extended from towards 1920, and who believe that poetry should employ the language of common speech. They were interested in new rhymes, new rhythms, and have complete freedom in subject matter and wanted a clear, concentrated and precise image of their expression. They wrote short poems that used ordinary language and free words to create sharp, exact, concentrated pictures. Now we discuss the imagism. During the modern era, writers broke from traditions by coming up with experimental writing techniques like imagism, name given to a movement in poetry. Began in 1908, and the aim was to clarify the expression through the use of precise visual image. Yes, you have to clarify your expression through the use of precise visual images. The imagism as a movement is often credited to have started with G.E. Hilmi, who created the Poets Club in 1908. After the death of T.S. Hilmi, Ezra Pound separated the idea of dry, hard classical verse. Imagism called for a return to what were seen as more classical values such as directness of presentations and economy of language, and a willingness to explain with non-traditional verse forms. Images used free verse. The rejection of conventional verse forms in the 1920s owed much to the Images' reputation in Georgian poet style. Some Images poets, the Ezra Pound, Hilda Dolittle, Amy Lowell, William Carlos. So far we have discussed the Imagist movement that began in 1908, advocated by British and American poets, reaction against the Romanticism and Idealism. Paint a picture without using a lot of complicated words. Some Imagist poets, Ezra Pound, Hilda Dolittle, Amy Lowell, William Carlos. Now toward the characteristic of Imagist poetry. Clarity of expression through the use of precise visual image. So, first characteristic and the silent feature is that your expression should be clear by using a very precise visual imagery. You have to use images in a very precise way. Secondly, reaction to romantic fuzziness and facile emotionalism. It's a revolt against all the old traditions, including the Romantic and the Victorian age. Third, direct treatment of the thing through presentation of an image. So, you are not going to elaborate things, and you are not going to elaborate the language by using random words just to spread it, just to extend it, but direct treatment of the thing. In poetry, you are going to treat things, any idea, any emotion, anything that you want to discuss in your poetry, you must present in the form of an image. And what are the adjectives used, or what are used for it, or what are the quality of that image? It should be concrete, firm, definite picture. As already we introduced the term precise visual imagery. Fourth point is the suggestion. It's more like a suggestion, not a statement. You are not going to give the depth meaning or explanation of each and everything. You just give suggestions and avoid the extra elaboration of things and to make the meaning more meaningful. Then concentration. Concentration means you must be precise. You must be more presentable to make your things more concrete, definite and solid. So for this you have to avoid extra words or use words just for the sake of decoration. No, you have to stick to the main idea. You have to stick to your concentration, your directness. No need to give extra words that do not contribute to the presentation. And then the very important thing, the second last point, the creation of new rhythms. No, you are not allowed to use old traditions. Even the rhythms, the rhyme scheme, the tone, not only the style is changing, but you have to change the rhythms. You have to create your own rhymes. You are going to explore and invent new ideas regarding tone, then themes. Images use free words. Unlike the Georgian poet, the Imagists rejected the sentiment and discursiveness. Imagism called for a return of classical values such as directness of presentation, economy of language, and willingness to experiment with non-traditional verse forms. Now we are comparing Imagists with the Romantic and the Victorian poets. So it's a comparative analysis. Romanticists and Victorian poets try to express poetry as a means of self-expression. For them, poetry is a means of expression by which we are going to express each and every idea. As far as imagists believe that function of poetry is not self-expression, it's a proper fusion of meaning in language. You are using words to give meaning, not to decorate it or not to give the self-expressions of emotions. Poems are basically considered as work of art. So it's important for the poet that he must dive after a kind of poetic statement, precise, passionate, profoundly felt, and desperately accurate. The images did not look upon the poet as a sweet singer. So for them, the images is not like a sweet singer to elaborate and to sing and to express meaning. You are not going to express yourself. You are giving the meaning in your languages. Use the language in order to build up the rich patterns of meaning. So you are using language not for your expressions, but to build up the rich patterns of meaning. Meaning should be solid and concrete. You are going to give the suggestions. You are not going to give the statements and to elaborate it, but to build up the rich patterns. Your meaning should be rich in everything and every aspect. When you are portraying any kind of idea, thing in poetry, the main focus is to build the meaning. You have in-depth meaning for your language. So this movement ended around 1920 because Imagism had come to mean anything that was unrhymed and irregular verse. So we can say it's a short period, but it's not like that it's not influential. It had great effects and influenced many writers. So it's a very, you can say, fruitful, and Imagism would deeply influence the course of modernist poetry in English. French poets. Now coming towards the second part. After Imagist, we are going to discuss French poet, which is generally known as war poet. The French poetry or the war poetry is also included in the modern poetry because of the wars, because of the world war. So poetry written during or about the war. As you know that many people destroyed their lives during First World War, so the socio-economic and political conditions also affected the poets, and mostly they were soldiers. These poets mostly were soldiers or somehow influenced by the political circumstances that were prevailing at that time. So mostly they lived their life in the trenches, and so they are also known as trench poet. And this type of poetry is naturalistic and painfully realistic. It is more toward naturalism because they portrayed all those things which were there at the time of war. And the aim of this poetry is to awaken the conscience of the reader to the horrors of war. Background of the war poetry. As the First World War breaks out, a great number of young people die in the trenches. War was an honorable thing to do, glorified as a noble thing. Actually, the anti-war poetry, naturalistic and painfully realistic. Message through such poetry: the war is brutal, vicious, meaningless, stupid, and barbarous. The war poetry is a negation of Georgian period. The war poets adopted quite opposite views of the war and of Georgian society. Favorite things were the beauty of the English countryside. devoid of poetic or philosophical tact, presented war as a noble flair. The war poets experienced the fighting horror of modern warfare represented in an unconventional anti-rhetoric way, to awaken the conscience of the readers to the horror of the war. Explore what the war was really about, new ways to express terror or war. Some of the war poets were Siegfried Sassoon, Wilfred Owen, Robert Brooke, S.A. Rosenberg. So now I am going to review the French poets. Since ancient time, it has been considered heroic to die in war. Homer's epic poem celebrated, among other things, the nobility of dying on the battlefield. This view continued well in the 19th century. So, English poetry arose during the First War. Why do you think the response to war was in England as much in other European countries? It was enthusiastic because a lot of volunteers enrolled in the armed forces, some driven by a wish for glory and adventure, but most of genuine patriotism. But after a few months, the original braveness and enthusiasm disappeared and was replaced by discomfort and disillusionment. In England, it was first of all the voice of the young poet, called war poets, that first revealed the horror of what trench life or death by gas were like. What was the clear response to the war? So here the question arises, what was the early response to the war? It was a sort of deep romantic sense of patriotic duty. At first they considered as one of the duty to fought for their country, but as the war went on, the attitude changed and the poets turned to a more realistic approach, inspired by personal experiences of small and great tragedies of thousands of unknown people. The war poets realized what the war was really about. Poets abandoned the romantic vocabulary they had previously used and felt the need and new styles that could better mirror the harsh realities of war. One of the important and the great war poet is Siegfried Sassoon, 1886 to 1967. Sassoon was perhaps the most innocent of the war poets. John Hazelbridge has called Sassoon the ancient hero or the accidental hero. Born into a wealthy Jewish family in 1886, Sassoon's reactions to the realities of the war were all the more bitter and violent. He met and influenced one of the poet, that is Alfred Owen. Wilfred Owen, born in 1893 and died in 1918, regarded as one of the Britain's greatest war poets, was influenced by Sassoon. Owen's aim was to tell the truth about what he called the pity of war. In 1915, Owen enlisted in the army and in December 1916 was sent to France. He met some key literary figures of the time, including Robert Graves, Robert Ross, and H.G. Wells. The horrible violence of war turned Owen into a poetic genius. Third influential poet, the war poet, is Rupert Brooke. Rupert was born in 1887 to 1915, promising young poet. Brooke's entire reputation as a war poet rest on only 5 war sonnets. Rupert Brooke's best-known poems were probably The Soldier and The Dead. Now I am going to read one of his poems, that is Dead. Blow out, you burgles, over the rich dead. There's none of these so lonely and poor of old, but dying has made us rare gift than gold. These laid the world away, poured out the red, sweet wine of youth, gave up the years to be of work and joy, and that unhoped serene that men call age, and those who would have been their sons they gave their immortality. Blow, burgles, blow, they brought us for our dirt. Holiness lacked so long, and love and pain. Honor has come back as a king to earth, and paid his subject with royal weight, and nobleness walks in our ways again, and we have come into our heritage. This is the poem The Dead by Rupert Brooke. This poem describes the lives and experiences of mankind and one will experience after death in the unbroken glory of God. The poem begins with a description of the kind of lives that one group of dead have lived. This group can be considered to be a specific collection of people or a metaphor for all those that have and will die. This gives the poem a universal theme related to any who read it. The poem is about the glorification of war and how dying in battle will be rewarded with honor and nobleness. It describes the dead as if they are lucky and rich to have done something so great as dying in battle. It also mentions how they have gave up everything they had, such as work and joy, unhoped serene, and their immortality. However, it says they have received rare gifts than gold. In another poem by Rupert Brooke, The Soldier. If I should die, think only this of me, that there is some corner of a foreign field, that is forever England there shall be. In that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shape made aware, gave once her flower to love, her ways to roam. A body of England, breathing English air, washed by the river, blessed by sons of home. And think, this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less. Give somewhere back the thought by England given. Her sights and sounds seems happy as her day, and after lunch of friends and gentleness, in heart at peace, under an English heaven. Rupert Brooke's best known poem is probably The Soldier. It was written in 1914. The Soldier expresses a noble self-sacrifice attitude toward war, in contrast to the more realistic poetry of other war poets. Now coming toward the next topic, and that is William Butler Yeats. William Butler Yeats was a famous Irish poet and also a dramatist. He was pioneer of the literary world in 20th century. He was also a member of Irish Senate. His high contribution toward English literature enabled him to win Nobel Prize in 1923, and he was considered as poet laureate. He was an Irish national poet and the leader of Irish literary movement. Yeats poetry. Now coming towards Yeats poetry, Yeats often wrote very ambiguous poetry that had both an obvious and an abstract meaning. His poems suggest other thoughts and messages that are more abstract and they may seem more significant. Yeats as a modern poet. Yeats was one of the modern poets who influenced his contemporaries as well as successors. He was one of the renowned figure of modern poet, and he definitely marked inspiration for others, for the upcoming poets also and for the successors also. He was a great dreamer, a thinker. He fell under the spell of the folklore and the superstitions of the Irish peasantry. He felt himself a stranger in the world of technology and rationalism. He was a realistic poet whose poetry was not realistic. He is a prominent poet in modern times for his sense of moral wholeness of humanity and history. Yeats was a realistic poet, though his early poetry was not realistic. His later poems, despite realistic accent, are not free from magic and the mysterious world. Yeats as a symbolic poet. So, there are so many dimensions related to Yeats. He used symbols extensively. He used different types of symbols in his poetry, and what the purpose of using symbols to give the depth in the meaning, to provide extra elaboration, and it's a kind of art also. This means that he used elusive imagery and symbols throughout his career. They were carefully woven into the pattern of the poem. So once he organized the structure of the poem, and then he used careful imagery overhead. So in most of his work you can see that they were carefully woven into the pattern of the poem. He uses these symbols to convey his inner sensations, his visions and his mystic experiences. So the entire focus on image or the symbols is that he used to convey his inner sensation, his vision and his mystic experiences. In his early poems, his symbols are elementary. They are not complex and thus they put no obstacles in the way of meanings. In one of his poems, The Wild Swans at Cooley, he used symbols extensively. The obvious meaning of this poem is that the flock of swans always fly together and never leave one swan behind. However, Yeats uses the symbol of swan to portray a more abstract message that he is lonely and he envies the companion swans. Major works of Yeats included. Some of his important later work include The Wild Swans at Cooley, published in 1917, A Vision in 1925, The Tower in 1928, and Works for Music Perhaps and Other Poems in 1932. Yeats passed away on January 28, 1939 in Martin, France. The publication of last poems and two plays shortly after his death further cemented him as a poet and playwright. Now coming towards the main author, or you may say the poet called Thomas Stearns Eliot, born in St. Louis on September 26, 1888. He joined Smith Academy in St. Louis and then the Milton Academy. His family was originally from New England. He began seeing his poems and short stories in print. His writing would occupy him for the rest of his life. He began courses at Harvard University in 1906 and graduating 3 years later with a bachelor degree of arts. He also studied at Harvard. Eliot's career as a poet can be divided into 3 periods: first period, second period, and the third period. So, first period, in which he wrote the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock in 1911. Second period, coinciding with First World War and culminating in The Wasteland in 1922. The third period coincide for the rise of Nazism and culminating in the wartime Four Quartets in 1943. Eliot as a modernist poet. He wrote poems as well as poetic style gave elements of the modern movement that was famous during his time. Modernism was viewed as a rejection of traditional 19th century norms, represented by orientation toward fragmentation, free verse, contradictory allusions. Modern features appear greatly in the work of Eliot. Two of the most prominent poems where Eliot shows his modern orientations are The Love Song of Alfred Prufrock and The Wasteland. The point is that Eliot seems to have nostalgic for the medieval tradition linked with his interest in the modern life. Eliot combines both concern with religious issues, medieval themes, and trend toward contemporary issues. So, as critics observed, Eliot seeks some sort of integration between the two aspects. In one of his poems, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, he wrote about the modern aspects. He expressed the basic pattern of modern age. This is regarded as one of the basic modernist poems. It shows the modern element of disintegration of life and mental stability. He speaks about the problem of the modern man, Prufrock. He laments his physical and intellectual shortcomings and also discussed the lack of opportunities in his life. He understood to be either as a real place or a mental state reflecting the subconscious of the person. The most important modernist technique in the poem is the stream of conscious technique. This technique reflects the fragmentary nature of the modern man's mentality. It allows the reader to explore the inner self of the character. Thought shift, which is very often and from trivial to significant issues and vice versa. This explains the idea of subjective time in modernism. One of the poems, The Wasteland, also considered as a fundamental modernist text. He showed clear reliance on images, many fragmental images that reflect the feeling of loss in modern man. The narrator promises to show the reader how to make meaning from fragmentations and is essential feature of modernism. Poets after T.S. Eliot. One of the influential figures after T.S. Eliot was Auden. Auden as a modern poet, both thematically and structurally. Auden's poems show the very essence of modernism. The characteristics that are needed to consider him as a modern poet are all in profusely blended in his poem. Auden's social concerns are mostly expressed in the context of war. An avid observer of war, he also discusses different social, political, and economic upheavals. He argues that the most of the ills of the contemporary society was due to their socio-economic conditions. Modern age is marked by the violence and war. In The Shield of Achilles, he says, iron-hearted man slaying Achilles, who would not live long. Auden in his later poetry portrays many modernistic styles. He has given up the psychological economic diagnosis. He developed a more sober, contemplative and religious approach. The above-mentioned tracts indicate that Auden is a true modern poet, expressing the modernity through his poems. Next poet is Sir Stephen Spender. His reputation in the 1930s, he gained famous with poems expressing the political conscience-stricken leftist new writing of that period. Among important influences shown in his early volumes: Poems in 1933, Veena in 1934, Trial of a Judge. His reputation for humanism and honesty is fully vindicated in subsequent volumes. These are the few names of his poems: Runes and Visions in 1942, Poems of Dedication in 1947, The Edge of Being in 1949, Collected Poems in 1955. Next, the Selected Poems in 1965, The Generous Days 1971, and Delphin in 1994. From the above, it was seen that from 1940 Spender was somehow perspective criticism, and his additional association with the influential reviews Horizon Encounter than he was as a poet. Spender prose works include short stories. This is one of the work, What I Expected. What I expected was thundering fight, long struggles with man, and climbing after continual strain. I should grow strong, then the rock would shake, and I rest long. What I had not foreseen was the graduated day, weakening the will, the brightening away, the lack of good to touch, the fading of body, smoke before wind, corrupt, unsubstantial. Now coming toward the Cecil de Levis, which under the influence of White Hawk Auden produced very fascinating poems. He was fascinated by Auden's restless energy, formidable intelligence and air of authority. Served as joint editor of Oxford Poetry 1927, for which they wrote a manifesto-like preface, dogmatic overstatement and burlesque in way that make it clear the Auden was the dominant partner. Tossing together ideas from Eliot, call for a new kind of poetry. His exact lineament are hard to discern in their prose. Other important English poets of the present age: Louis Massenet, Edith Sitwell, Robert Graves, Roy Campbell, Geoffrey Gibson, George Barker, Dylan Thomas. And these are the few characters that they were prevailing in their poems: tendency toward romanticism under the influence of Hopkins, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, and Auden. Do not give importance to dry, hard images. And Dylan Thomas was one of the popular poets of the among the young poets. Unity of Man. Dylan Thomas, popular of the young poets, he represented unity of man with nature, and of generation with each other, of divine with human, of life with man. Death does not mean destruction, but a guarantee of immortality. This is one of the work Dylan Thomas. I personally love that poem, and death shall have no dominion. So I want you people to listen to this poem. You can get YouTube access, and you can get and listen to that poem, and you may also read it. It's a very, very thought-provoking. Death shall have no dominion. So it's about death, it's about what happened when you die. So it's very, very impressive. Now we come to the conclusion of modern poetry. So far we have discussed the images, the trend poetry. So you have seen different patterns. You realize that it's very important and that literature should be parallel with the socio-economic and political conditions. So in spite of tendency toward romanticism, it is the face of modern poetry that we have so many influential poets, Yeats, Eliot, Spencer, Auden. They all did a global job. Eliot and his school of poetry hold the field. Modern poetry made the whole. Possesses intellectual toughness, no attempt to return to Tennyson, trend toward Wordsworth's quietness. They are more modern poetry, more toward the classical poetry. So in spite of every effort, you cannot attempt to return to Tennyson, but it's a trend toward Wordsworth's quietness. This is all from my side. Thank you.